I was 18 years old, standing behind the counter of my parents' cafe, watching my classmates pack their cars and head off to college. I had a partial scholarship to State University. My GPA was 3.8. But when I told my parents, they looked at each other and said, "We need you here, son. College can wait. Family comes first." My younger sister, Sarah, was starting at an expensive prep school that same year. I watched them write check after check for her tuition while I poured coffee and wiped tables. I never imagined that 10 years later they would come knocking on my door with their hands out asking for $135,000. Before we dive into what happened next, I would love to know where you are watching this from. Drop your city in the comments below. And if you are curious about how this story ends, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you do not miss the rest of this journey. Trust me, you will want to see how I responded when they showed up at my apartment asking for that money. Let me take you back to the beginning. The spring of my senior year in high school, I was on top of the world. I had worked hard, maintained excellent grades, and earned a partial scholarship that would cover about 60% of my tuition at Oregon State University. I remember the day the acceptance letter came. I ran into the cafe where my parents were working, waving the envelope like it was a winning lottery ticket. My father, Richard, was restocking the pastry case. My mother, Linda, was behind the espresso machine. They both stopped what they were doing when they saw my face. "I got in," I said, breathless with excitement. "And they are giving me a scholarship, $12,000 a year." My mother smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. My father wiped his hands on his apron and walked over to me. "That is great, Peter," he said, his voice careful. "But we need to talk about this realistically." That word realistically should have been my first warning. We sat down at one of the corner tables after the lunch rush died down. My father explained that the cafe was not doing as well as they had hoped. Business was steady, but the profit margins were thin. They had expenses I did not understand at 18. Equipment repairs, health insurance, rising rent. "We cannot afford the rest of your tuition," my father said. "Even with the scholarship, we would still need to come up with $15,000 a year." "I can work part-time," I offered immediately. "I can take out student loans." My mother reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Peter, there is something else. Your sister is starting at St. Mary's Prep next year. We have already committed to that. The tuition there is $18,000 annually." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "So Sarah gets to go to private school, but I cannot go to college at all." "It is not like that," my father said, but his tone said it was exactly like that. "Sarah's younger. She needs structure and guidance. You are mature enough to handle postponing college for a while. And frankly, we need you here full time. The cafe is struggling. We need reliable help we can count on." I looked between them, waiting for one of them to laugh and tell me this was some kind of test. But they just looked back at me with tired, serious faces. "Family comes first, son," my father said. "You understand that, right?" What was I supposed to say? I was 18. They were my parents. They had raised me, fed me, given me a home. The weight of obligation pressed down on my shoulders like a physical thing. "How long?" I asked quietly. "Just a year or two," my mother said quickly. "Just until we get back on our feet." I nodded, not trusting my voice. I folded the acceptance letter and put it back in the envelope. I never responded to the university. I watched that opportunity disappear like smoke. The next few months were brutal. I watched my friends post photos from orientation, from their dorm rooms, from football games and fraternity parties. Meanwhile, I was up at 5 in the morning to help my father prep for the breakfast rush. I learned to make every drink on the menu. I could clean the espresso machine in my sleep. I knew how to smile at difficult customers and how to upsell the daily specials. Sarah started at St. Mary's that fall. I drove her there on her first day, helped her carry boxes into her dorm. She looked so excited, so full of possibility. I felt happy for her and hollow for myself at the same time. My parents never paid me a real wage. They said I was family, so I got room and board and whatever tips I made. They said we were all in this together. But when I suggested we were in it together enough for me to take evening classes at community college, my father shut that down immediately. "We need you during evening rush," he said. "That is our busiest time. You cannot just abandon your post." So I stayed. 1 year became 2. 2 years became 3. I watched Sarah graduate from prep school with honors. I watched my parents beam with pride at her graduation ceremony. I felt like a ghost in the family photos. When Sarah got accepted to UC Berkeley, I was genuinely happy for her. She had worked hard and she deserved it. But when my parents sat me down to tell me they were taking out a loan to cover her tuition, something inside me cracked. "Wait," I said. "Berkeley costs, $35,000 a year, and you are taking out loans for that." "Your sister earned this opportunity," my mother said. "We are not going to let financial concerns hold her back from her dreams." The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. But I did not say anything. What was the point? By then I was 21 years old. I had been working in the cafe for 3 years. I had no degree, no real job prospects outside of food service, and no savings, because I was barely making minimum wage and tips. But something changed in me that day. A customer named Mr. Harrison had been coming to the cafe for years. He owned a small IT consulting company and always sat in the corner with his laptop working through the afternoon slow period. We had chatted over the years about technology, about the systems we used in the cafe, about how I had taught myself to fix our temperamental point-of-sale system when it crashed. One afternoon, he closed his laptop and looked at me seriously. "Peter," he said, "you are wasting your potential here. I have seen you fix our POS system, manage inventory, even redesign the menu to boost sales. Have you ever thought about a real career?" I wanted to go to college. I said the words slipping out before I could stop them. But family obligations got in the way. Mr. Harrison nodded slowly. "Listen, I'm hiring for an entry-level IT position. The pay starts at $38,000 a year. It is not great, but there is room to grow. I can train you. You are smart enough to pick it up quickly. Are you interested?" I stared at him. $38,000 a year was more money than I had ever imagined making. It was a real salary, with benefits with a future. "Can I think about it?" I asked. "Take the weekend," he said. "But Peter, do not waste your whole life here. You deserve better." That night I could not sleep. I lay in my childhood bedroom staring at the ceiling thinking about what Mr. Harrison had said. I was 23 years old. Most of my high school friends were graduating from college. They were starting careers, moving to new cities, building lives. I was still pouring coffee in my hometown. The next morning I walked into the kitchen where my parents were having breakfast. "I need to talk to you both," I said. They looked up from their plates. I took a deep breath. "I have been offered a job, a real job with a salary and benefits. I am going to take it." The silence that followed was deafening. Then my father put down his fork with a clatter. "After everything we have done for you," he said, his voice rising. "We gave you a roof over your head. We fed you. We taught you the value of hard work. And this is how you repay us, by abandoning us." "I am not abandoning you," I said, trying to stay calm. "I will still help on weekends if you need me. But I cannot spend my whole life working for tips in the family cafe. I need to build a future." My mother had tears in her eyes. "How can you be so selfish? We sacrificed so much for this family. We took out loans for your sister's education. We put everything into this business, and you are just going to walk away." Sarah had come downstairs during the argument. She stood in the doorway in her Berkeley sweatshirt, arms crossed. "Peter, do not be selfish," she said. "Mom and Dad need you. You cannot just think about yourself." Something snapped inside me. "Like you all thought about me when I was 18, when I had a scholarship, and you told me I could not go." "That was different," my father said sharply. "We needed you then." "And I need this now," I said. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. "I am taking the job. I am moving out. I will help when I can, but I am not spending another 5 years of my life stuck here." My father stood up his chair, scraping loudly against the floor. "Fine," he said, his voice cold. "If you leave, do not expect anything from us. You want to be independent, then be independent. You are on your own." I moved out the next week. The first few months in my studio apartment were terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. I had never lived alone before. I had never had to budget for groceries or utilities or all the small expenses that add up. But I also had never felt so free. The job with Mr. Harrison was challenging. I knew nothing about IT when I started, but I learned fast. I took every training course he offered. I stayed late to practice. I watched YouTube tutorials on my laptop until midnight. Within 6 months, I was handling basic client calls on my own. Within a year, Mr. Harrison gave me a raise to $45,000. I barely spoke to my family during that time. I sent a card at Christmas. I texted Sarah occasionally, but she was busy with her life at Berkeley and rarely responded with more than a few words. My parents never called. They had meant what they said. I was on my own. But I was not really alone. I made friends at work. I started going to networking events for young professionals. I learned to cook for myself, which was surprisingly satisfying. I opened a savings account and watched it grow dollar by dollar. It was not much, but it was mine. 2 years after I started, Mr. Harrison promoted me to junior IT manager. My salary jumped to $55,000. I could not believe it. I remember calling an old friend from high school, someone I had not talked to in years, just to tell someone the news. "That is amazing," she said. "Your parents must be so proud." I did not tell her that my parents had no idea. They had made their choice, and I had made mine. I kept working. I kept learning. I enrolled in online courses and earned certification after certification. CompTIA, Cisco, Microsoft. Each one opened new doors. By the time I was 26, I was managing a small team. By 27, I was a senior IT manager making $85,000 a year. I started volunteering at a local community center, teaching free coding classes to kids who could not afford expensive camps. That was where I met Emma. She was volunteering too, running an art program. We started talking during breaks between sessions. She was funny and kind and completely unimpressed by job titles or salaries. She cared about what you did with your life, not what you made. We started dating. 6 months later, I knew I wanted to marry her. Life was not perfect, but it was mine. I had built it from nothing, with no help, no safety net, no family support, and I was proud of that. Then one Saturday afternoon, when I was 28 years old, my doorbell rang. I opened the door to find my father, my mother, and Sarah standing in the hallway. For a moment, I just stared at them. I had not seen them in person in nearly 5 years. "Hi, Peter," my mother said. Her voice was awkward, uncertain. "Can we come in?" I stepped aside and let them into my apartment. It was small, but nice. I had good furniture, now art on the walls, a bookshelf full of technical manuals and novels. It looked like an adult lived there, because one did. We sat in my living room, tension thick in the air. Nobody seemed to know how to start the conversation. Finally, my father cleared his throat. "Peter, we need to talk. It is important." "Okay," I said carefully. My mother reached over and took Sarah's hand. "Sarah is getting married next summer. To Jake. You remember him? Do not you? They met at Berkeley." "Congratulations," I said to Sarah. She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "We are planning the wedding," my mother continued. "Sarah has always dreamed of a beautiful celebration, a destination wedding in Napa Valley. It is going to be wonderful." I waited. There was clearly more coming. My father shifted in his seat. "The thing is, a wedding like that is expensive, very expensive. The venue alone is $40,000. Then there is catering flowers, photography accommodations for guests. It all adds up." "How much are we talking about?" I asked, though I had a sinking feeling I already knew where this was going. "The total budget is $135,000, my mother said. "We have saved $30,000, but we need help with the rest." The room went very quiet. I could hear the clock ticking on my wall, the distant sound of traffic outside. "You want me to give you $105,000, I said slowly. "Not give," my father said quickly. "Loan. We will pay you back. Eventually." I almost laughed. "When have you ever paid me back for anything I worked for you for 5 years and barely made enough for gas money?" "That was different," my mother said. "You were family. We were all working together." "And now," I asked, "what am I now?" Sarah leaned forward. "Peter, come on. This is my wedding. Do not you want to see me happy? Family is supposed to support each other." That word, family, it hung in the air like a weapon. Where was this logic when I needed support for college? I asked. The words came out harder than I intended. Where was family comes first when I had a scholarship and dreams of my own? "That was 10 years ago," my father said. "We needed you then. This is different. This is about your sister's happiness." "And what about my happiness 10 years ago? Did that matter?" "You turned out fine," my mother said, gesturing around my apartment. "Look at you. You have a good job. You make good money. You can afford to help us." I stood up and walked to the window. I looked out at the street below, at people going about their ordinary Saturday afternoon. I thought about 18-year-old me watching friends leave for college while I stayed behind. I thought about 21-year-old me watching my parents take out loans for Sarah while telling me there was no money for my education. I thought about every year I had spent building a life from nothing, with no help, no encouragement, no acknowledgement. I turned back to face them. "Do you know what I remember most from when I was 18?" I asked. "I remember you looking me in the eye and telling me that college could wait, that family came first, that I was mature enough to sacrifice my dreams for the good of everyone else." "We did what we thought was right," my father said defensively. "Maybe you did," I said. "But now I am going to do what I think is right. I am going to give you the exact same answer you gave me 10 years ago." They all stared at me. My mother's face had gone pale. "The answer is this," I continued. "Family comes first. And my family, the family I am building for myself, my future, my own dreams, they come first now. Not yours, mine." "What are you saying?" my father asked, though I think he knew. "I am saying no. I will not be giving you $105,000. I will not be giving you $100,000. I will not be giving you $1 for this wedding." Sarah's mouth dropped open. "You are being cruel." "No," I said quietly. "I am being exactly what you taught me to be. Self-sufficient. Independent. You told me I was on my own. You told me not to expect anything from you. I took that lesson to heart. My mother was crying now. But we are your parents. We raised you. And I was your son. But that did not matter when I needed you. You made your choice then. I am making mine now. This is different, my father said, his voice rising. This is about your sister's wedding, not some pipe dream about college. My education was not a pipe dream, I said, and I felt 10 years of suppressed anger rising in my chest. It was my future. It was my one chance. And you took it away from me without a second thought. You took out loans for Sarah. You paid for her prep school, her university, everything she ever wanted. And you told me that not everyone is meant for college, that I should be grateful for the opportunity to work for free in your cafe. We needed you, my mother said. And I needed you, I shot back. But you were not there. Sarah stood up, her face flushed. I will remember this, Peter. When you need help someday, do not come crawling back to us. I will not, I said. I learned how to stand on my own feet. You made sure of that. I learned that the only person I can count on is myself. That was your gift to me. And now I'm giving it back. My father stood too, his jaw tight with anger. You are making a mistake. Family is everything. Then maybe you should have remembered that 10 years ago. They left without another word. Sarah slammed the door on her way out. I heard their footsteps echoing down the hallway, getting fainter and fainter until they disappeared entirely. I stood alone in my apartment, my hands shaking slightly. But underneath the adrenaline, underneath the confrontation, I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. I felt free. The first week after they left was hard. I second-guessed myself constantly. Late at night, I would lie awake wondering if I had been too harsh, too unforgiving, wondering if I should call them back and apologize. But then I would remember. I would remember 18-year-old me folding up that acceptance letter. I would remember 21-year-old me watching them write checks for Sarah's tuition while telling me there was no money. I would remember every time they had chosen her over me, her dreams over mine, her future over my present. And I would remember that I did not owe them anything, not anymore. I called my friend Marcus from work and told him what had happened. He listened without interrupting, and when I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. You did the right thing, he finally said. You cannot set yourself on fire to keep other people warm, not even family, especially not family who would not do the same for you. His words helped. But I knew I needed more than a friend's reassurance. I needed to work through a decade of resentment and hurt. So I found a therapist. Her name was Dr. Patterson. She was in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense way of speaking. In our first session, I told her everything. About the cafe, about college, about Sarah, about the wedding. When I finished, she looked at me thoughtfully. Do you feel like you owe your parents something? She asked. I do not know, I admitted. They raised me. They gave me a home. But they also used me. They made me give up my future for theirs. You do not owe anyone your dreams, she said simply. Not your parents, not your siblings, not anyone. The debt you think you owe for being raised, you paid that. You paid it for 5 years in that cafe. You paid it in every opportunity you lost, every door that closed, because you were not in college when your peers were. You paid it in full, Peter. You do not owe them anything more. Those words broke something open inside me. I cried in her office that day, really cried, for the first time in years. All the grief I had been carrying for the person I could have been if my life had gone differently poured out of me. But grief is not the same as regret. I grieved for 18-year-old Peter, but I did not regret the man I had become. I had built a good life. I had done it alone, which made it harder, but it also made it entirely mine. Over the next few months, I kept working with Dr. Patterson. I learned about boundaries, about the difference between obligation and love, about how families can be toxic, even when they do not mean to be. I learned that saying no to people you love is not selfish. It is self-preservation. 6 months after that confrontation in my apartment, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that the wedding had happened. It was smaller than Sarah had planned. The budget came in around $40,000. My parents had taken out another loan. Sarah posted photos on social media. She looked beautiful and happy. She also sent me one text message. "I wish you were here today." I stared at that text for a long time. Part of me felt sad that I had missed it. Part of me felt relieved that I had not been there watching them celebrate with money they claimed they did not have, while I stood on the sidelines remembering all the times they told me no. I did not respond to the text. Some doors once closed should stay closed. My life kept moving forward. I got promoted again, this time to senior IT manager. My salary jumped to $115,000 a year. I proposed to Emma on a hiking trip, and she said yes. We started planning our own wedding, a small one, just close friends, and the family we had chosen for ourselves. No loans required. I volunteered more at the community center. I loved teaching those kids, loved watching them discover that they could create something from nothing but logic and imagination. Some of them reminded me of myself at that age, full of potential, but lacking opportunity. I made sure they knew that their dreams mattered, that they deserved to pursue them, that nobody had the right to take those dreams away. 2 years after the confrontation, I was 30 years old. Emma and I were married. We had a small apartment we were saving to upgrade. We had careers we loved, friends who supported us, and a future we were building together. One day, a card arrived in the mail. It was from my parents. Not a letter, just a card. A generic congratulations on your wedding card, the kind you buy at a drugstore. Inside they had written, "We heard you got married. We wish you both well." I showed it to Emma. She read it and then looked at me carefully, trying to gauge my reaction. "How do you feel?" she asked. "I do not know," I said honestly. It is nice that they reached out, I guess. But it is also too little too late. "Do you want to respond?" I thought about it. Part of me wanted to. Part of me wanted to rebuild something, even if it could never be what it was. But a bigger part of me knew that reaching back toward them meant opening myself up to being hurt again. It meant inviting people back into my life who had already proven they would choose themselves over me when it mattered. "No," I said finally. "I think I am good where I am." Emma hugged me. "You know I support whatever you decide, right? If you want to try to reconnect with them someday, I will be there. But you do not have to. You do not owe them a relationship just because they are your parents." That was something I loved about Emma. She understood that family is not just about blood. It is about showing up. It is about sacrifice that goes both ways. It is about supporting each other's dreams, not crushing them. I kept the card, but I did not respond. Maybe someday I would. Maybe someday enough time would pass that I could face them without feeling the weight of all those lost years. But that day was not today. Maybe it would never come. And I was okay with that. Because here is what I learned through all of this: forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It does not mean letting people back in to hurt you again. It does not mean pretending the past did not happen. Oh, real forgiveness means releasing yourself from the anger. It means choosing peace over resentment. It means deciding that you will not let their choices define your life anymore. I am not angry at my parents anymore. I am not angry at Sarah. I genuinely hope they are happy and healthy. But I also know that the relationship we have now, this distant, cordial nothing, is healthier for me than trying to rebuild something that was broken at its foundation. I chose myself. That is not selfish. That is survival. Family is not just blood. Family is the people who show up for you, who support your dreams, who celebrate your victories and hold you through your losses. Family is Emma, who sees me for who I am and loves me anyway. Family is Marcus and my other friends from work who check in on me and make me laugh. Family is Mr. Harrison, who saw potential in me when no one else did and gave me a chance. Family is the community I chose, not the one I was born into. My parents taught me a lot of lessons, though not the ones they intended. They taught me that I did not owe them my dreams. They taught me that love without respect is not really love at all. They taught me that sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones you need protection from. They taught me that I was strong enough to build a life alone, which means I am strong enough to handle anything. And maybe that was the most valuable lesson they could have ever given me, even if they never meant to. I still think about that acceptance letter sometimes. I think about the person I would have been if I had gone to college at 18, if I had followed that path. But I do not think about it with regret anymore. That person would have had an easier start, sure. But that person would not have learned to fight for every inch of progress. That person would not have learned that the only person who can save you is yourself. I look at my life now, at the career I built, at the woman I married, at the peace I finally found, and I know something for certain: I do not need their approval anymore. I do not need their acknowledgement. I do not need them to admit they were wrong or apologize for the past. I just need to keep moving forward, building the life I want, making choices that honor the dreams 18-year-old me had to set aside. That is my responsibility now. Not to them, to him, to the kid who deserved better and never got it. I am not angry anymore. I am just free. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who did not respect your dreams? Or maybe you have been in a situation where someone who let you down came back asking for help. I would love to hear your story in the comments below. And if you found this story meaningful, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this video with someone who might need to hear that it is okay to choose yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it helps you feel less alone in yours. Take care of yourself out there. You deserve it.